This is what we're talking about here is your expansion of the ULEZ scheme right across London, and it is your expansion. So we'd like to talk about that rather than the government. Our concern is that this is going to hit the poorest in our communities the hardest. So I just want to dig into some of these numbers. What's TfL's latest estimate for how many non-compliant vehicles are driving into the expanded area?
So, by the way, the schemes in Bath and Birmingham are also the Bath scheme and the Birmingham scheme, which the government has given support to. So, you can't use a coin of phrase. You can't speak for the government, did you say? Did you say you can't speak for the government?
I said I'm not at Birmingham question time.
Oh, I beg your pardon.
London
Sorry.
Question time. So.
Because I'd hope you'd lobby the government on behalf of Londoners, which you can do.
We can swap jobs if you like, Mr. Mayor.
Sorry?
We can swap jobs if you like.
Well, you've got to stand for election. We know how it turned out for the last candidate
Let's
from your
get on with
party
the
that stood for election
Thank you.
on May the 6th.
Thank you.
So, in relation to the Central London scheme, for which we've got figures that are accurate, the numbers of compliant vehicles are now 87%. In relation to the wider scheme, the expanded scheme, 6 out of 10 of Londoners in the expanded area don't own a car. In some boroughs like Hackney, it's even more than 6 out of 10. And the figures we've got in relation to vehicles that are non-compliant for the expanded scheme, I can write you with exact details. I've not got any else here, but I can write you. We have got a number. It may be a bit dated because over the last period there's been more people converting to compliant vehicles, but I'm happy to write you. We have got the figure in TfL, and I'll drop you a note.
That'd be fantastic. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You know, an approximate number would be great. So, building on that, how much is left in the car and motorcycle scrappage scheme? The concern is that there's enough in that scheme, so that's not suspended as well. How much is left?
Yeah, good question. So in relation to both the car and motorcycle scheme and also the charity scheme, we think we'll be using up the monies pretty soon. If you remember, I mentioned that the van scrappage scheme, because I allocated more money, we've reopened that for those who'd applied previously, but we'd run out of money. So I don't think, at the moment, our estimates are we don't think there'll be many more. We don't think we won't run out of money by the scheme beginning, if you see what I mean.
I understand it, and you know that's the root of a lot of what I'm asking today, because our concern is that this is going to hit the poorest in our communities. So earlier in the year, the GLA Conservatives proposed that we use £50 million from City Hall's business rates reserves to invest in TfL scrappage schemes, and that money could help remove over 7,000 non-compliant vehicles. Is that something that you can look at again to help those underprivileged Londoners?
I'd love to. The challenge is, pursuant to the most recent deal done with the government, that they're requiring TfL to find an additional £300 million savings in the year 21-22 and £730 million savings by 22-23. So any additional money we put into TfL would be directed towards the savings requirement from the government and or new income revenues were required later on. So the challenge is, if we put more money into TfL, we won't be able to direct it towards the people that you care about because of the requirements from the government. But if you're able to lobby the government to remove some of those strings...
So just so I'm clear, what you're saying is that you can't use that reserve to fund any kind of TfL vehicle?
What I'm saying is that because of the deal with the government, any more money that goes into TfL will be directed towards the savings and or the revenues in the future, rather than those Londoners, unless we could find savings elsewhere.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, turning to an interview you gave yesterday, where you spoke to the Evening Standard, you said that Londoners don't need to buy a brand new vehicle. They can buy a second-hand vehicle, which is a little bit confusing. That's suggesting that we take money out of the hands of the poor and send it to sort of used car salesmen. You went on to say that the good news is that for your vehicle to be ULEZ compliant, it's not that expensive. You don't need to buy a new car. All you need to do is have a petrol car that's newer than 2005 or a diesel car more recent than 2015. Mr. Mayor, wouldn't you agree that good news would be providing some extra support for Londoners?
I think that's a point you should make to the Chancellor and to the Secretary of State for Transport, who appears to be wanting to punish Londoners who are crucial to our country's recovery. They're points I've made regularly to the government. I think you're right. We shouldn't be punishing the poorest Londoners. That's one of the reasons why we're keen to fix the air in London. The issue of poor quality air is an issue of social justice. It's the poorest Londoners, least likely to own cars, who suffer the worst consequence of poor quality air. It's the poorest children who have the stunted lungs and the poorest adults who have asthma.
Absolutely, we understand that, and it's not that we're talking about. We're talking about the charge for the poorest people in London. And it seems that they've got two options. The option is to pay the daily charge, or to pay a sort of after-daily charge, where they go and buy a new car. And we don't think this is a great thing for Londoners to do, to sort of suggest that they go down to some sort of second-hand car showroom. Would you please look again at our proposals to help those Londoners, because they really do need that support?
Chair, I'm always happy to look at good suggestions, and I'm more than happy to look at any recommendations you've got to try and address the issue of poor quality here in London at the same time as helping poorest Londoners.
Thank you, Chair.